remember you being a stay-at-home, right? You wanted to be a stay-at-home, and then you were a stay-at-home, and then you were staying at home, and you were angry because you were staying at home. Whew, man, we sure did make things difficult. But I remember being at work, and you can respond to all of this. I'm gonna lay this out, and then you get to respond, because I don't want everybody to just think it's me talking and projecting all this shit. But you would guilt and shame me about making more money, and then I would go and make more money, and then you would guilt and shame me about socializing out with all the people. And when I knew that socializing, and I'm not just talking about socializing, you thought going to work, you always projected that going to work was socializing. And you would stay at home and isolate yourself, and then you would guilt and shame me about going to work and carrying out obligations and responsibilities that I had in this professional capacity that you kind of like kept forcing me, I guess, because I was a little bitch. Right. But you kept pushing, make more money, bigger title, make more money, whatever, get promoted. And I would do it, and then you would guilt and shame me about the amount of time that I took. Right. And really what you wanted is you wanted some sense of your own life. And when I opened up the window for you to have that and said, you can go out and get friends, you closed that window yourself. Yeah. So in some cases, you got to go and get what you want from life, and you can't wait for first of all, you can't wait for people to give permission. But second of all, when they do give you permission, you got to go and take it and honor that. So what you were doing is you were trying to make more money, because we think, I saw a great quote by a guy that I follow. His name is Jesse Elder. It says, money is wonderful fuel, but it's a horrible finish line. And we treated money like it was a finish line, right? We didn't treat it like it was fuel. But we kept I kept stepping into bigger corporate roles that required more of my time, that required more of my energy, that required more of my commitment. And as I continued to increase on the ladder, you got more resentful that I was socializing with all the people. Yeah. In the meantime, you wouldn't do anything to build your own life and build your own identity outside of this stay-at-home mom box that you kind of wanted, but once you were in it, you hated. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, that's an easy response. I didn't really want it. I think that backstory. I come from a very poverty-stricken family. My dad was a heroin addict. My mom died when I was very young.
Shoot, we haven't even gotten into that yet.
So I'm just laying a little bit there. And, I went from, we would live in flop house to flop house, constant evictions, stealing food, stealing toilet paper. It was bad. No electricity, no running water for an entire summer. So
stealing toilet paper.
Stealing toilet paper, literally. You're going to the gas station to get water to flush the toilet once a day because we had no running water. But that's a whole different thing. But because of that, I had this vision of what life was supposed to look like. And what that looks like is your husband goes to work, you make 6 figures a year, you stay at home, and all of these, you go to church, 2.2 kids, dog, fence, etc. And I was living someone else's dream. And the reality is, I never should have been a stay-at-home mom.
Right. True story.
Because I can get passionate about things that I love. I'm driven. I love to win. It is important for me to be in social settings, and I isolated myself.
She loves people, and then she loves beating them. So she loves winning.
I love winning. I love winning. So I never should have done that. And again, I did that because that's what you're supposed to do, and that's what you're supposed to want as a woman. And again, Mike, that's a whole other episode in itself.
I don't think this is going to be the last one.
No.
No, there's a lot to unpack here. And yeah, I think our lives really started to take off when we went to our neutral corners. We started sorting out our own mess, because I had, you hear a lot of stuff from my perspective, but it was a shit show inside of me, right? There was there was shame, there was molestation that I hadn't dealt with, there was abuse and abandonment that I hadn't dealt with, there was, and that's why I was so easily manipulated, right? So easily. That's why I would give up my authority to and my personal power to anyone. Literally, you weren't the first one.
Right.
I would give it up to anyone who who came into my life. It's like, I'm not here for me. I'm here to make you happy, and like that's complete shame. That's complete devaluing yourself as a human being. And I felt that was my role, was to give up what I wanted and any aspirations or any ambition that I had or any sense of health or well-being or desire.
You 100% lived in a martyr complex.
I 100%. I was here for you, and I would sacrifice myself for your well-being. And all of that was all trauma-bound. That's all self-devaluation that comes from trauma. I had to sort that shit out. You had 2 heroin addicted parents, pulled a heroin needle out of your dad's arm, stealing toilet paper. Your parents, dad and stepmom, like, so let's make sure we clear that up. Dad and stepmom would buy food and then lock it up and hide it from the kids, right? There were 3 kids in the house, and the kids were the last to eat. And sometimes the story you told me is you stole candy bars to eat, right? So you grew up in...
My stepsister would actually go and steal cookies and food for us. So I had a stepsister and a half-sister, and yes, that's a...
And televisions would come in the house, and then televisions would leave, and they'd go from house to house. And so... And there was this poverty thing, and there was this, your stepmom really was the ugly stepmom, where she kind of put you in a box and treated the other kids differently than you, and that whole thing was real in your life.
It was like a literal Cinderella.
It was, and then like you had to deal with that shit because you had never dealt with that. You had never resolved those conflicts in your life.
Well, I like to look at it that you say we went to our separate corners, and when we went to those separate corners, we were both completely bruised, bloodied, and battered, and not just from. And the crazy thing is, it wasn't just from our own personal traumas. It was bruises and scrapes inflicted on each other by the other person.
Each other.
Like it was crazy to look at. Looking back to I don't even know how it was just crazy. Like, we beat the shit out of each other when we were already beaten up by our trauma in our past.
Well, we were running from shit. And let me state this, because there's this post that's brewing, and posts are always brewing in my head, and content and blogs and podcasts and everything. It never stops. And Angie says that living with me is like living with a podcast. But there's this I guess this concept that I've been stewing on. And Angie and I got together. We met in 1999 in abnormal psychology class in Montgomery College in Rockville, Maryland. I had already graduated. I had my bachelor's, and I had a little bit of GI Bill to burn. So I took some classes that I wanted to take, and abnormal psychology just happened to be one of them. And I was 25, 26, and you were 21. So no, I was 27 and you were 21, because you were 21 already, and we're 6 years apart. And when you came home with me, we're not going to tell that. There's a whole nother episode about that.
It's a great story.
Angie was engaged when I met her.
It's a great story.
Angie was engaged when I met her. So then when we went out to the bar with her and her fiance, she came home with me, and she never left. So talk about being magnetic.
Definitely need to put the context into that story one day, because
it's a good one. So anyway, the point being, if that doesn't create insecurity, like well, if you'll leave your fiance for me, what will you do? Anyway, the point being is, we immediately got together. She came home with me and never left. Moved in my apartment, and I kind of laid some ground rules. Hey, things go in its place, like robotic military mic, Marine Corps mic, everything back in its place, and a place for everything, whatever. Anyway, we quickly jumped into everything. Yeah. Like, we bought a car together, bought a house together, had a kid. I mean, it happened quickly. Yeah. And in some of those cases, I'm like, is this even okay? Like, this doesn't make sense. what was happening wasn't making sense. But anyway, the point being,
it didn't make sense, but we both. I knew it was right.
Yeah.
It was crazy. Like
I don't know if I did until decades later when I went, oh, that's why all that stuff happened. I was in the swirl of the yes, and again, I had never really believed in myself or had any self-worth or self-esteem. So, and I didn't want to be alone, so I just kept. But then there was that satori, I guess that Buddhist term. There was that moment where I went, oh, that's why. Oh, that's beautiful. And it was like it was like the whole freaking the whole story played out in such a beautiful way. But the concept that I want to share is one of the conversations we had in Maryland, because we lived in Rockville or Germantown, Maryland. One of Angie said to me, hey, we should move to Oregon, or we should move somewhere. And like at that point, it's okay. Life will be better when we move.
right.
And then we moved to Oregon, and things got worse. And then Angie said we should move again. I was
Well, yeah, because in Oregon, I was constantly depressed. If you don't know much about Portland, Oregon, very rainy, 55 rainy, 9 months of the year. So I blame my depression, my annual psych ward visits,
right,
on the weather.
A lot of psych ward visits.
Yeah, but those 2 weeks every January. So then, well, if we don't leave Oregon, this is just going to continue to get worse. So we moved.
But they were all stories and
yeah,
excuses,
100%.
and it's raining, so I've got to be sad
Yeah.
and all this stuff. Anyway, the point being is when we were in Oregon, it's like, okay, life will get better as soon as we move.
Yes.
Then we moved to St. Louis, and things got worse again.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, things will be better when we have more money, and when we got more money, things got worse.
Yes.
Things will be better when we go on vacation, and sometimes our vacations were worse.
Yes.
With more conflict, with more pain, with more sadness than they were back home.
Yeah.
So it's like every time we looked forward to something, things got worse. It was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we future cast, when we try to imagine a better future somewhere else, things get worse.
Right.
But whenever we really truly enjoy and choose to feel okay and happy and joyful and loving and affectionate and committed right now, things always get better for us.
Yes.
Only always.
Every single time. Well, we blamed all of our problems on our geographical, situational circumstances, and the reality is we had control over it that whole time.
I'd say we didn't just move your mic closer to your mouth. We didn't just blame it on our geographical location. We blamed it on our money.
Mm-hmm.
We blamed it on each other.
Mm-hmm. Our
We
parents.
blamed it on parents.
Yeah.
We blamed it on anything and everything except the fact that we were making a miserable life out of a life that really was magical.
Yeah.
And we just didn't take time to really enjoy it or appreciate it.
Yeah.
We had the partner that we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't choose to enjoy it or appreciate it. We have beautiful, talented, gifted, driven, amazing children that have never given us a problem, a real problem in this world. And we treated them like they were just an afterthought.
Yeah.
And we never really just spent, like I remember our younger daughter, and now they're, we're almost empty nesters. In 2 months we'll be empty nesters.
7 weeks.
7 weeks. But I remember all she wanted was for us to play games as a family. And we didn't have the fortitude as a family to make that happen. And it's all she didn't ask for much. She just wanted us to have family game night once a week, and we wouldn't give it to her as a family.
And when we did, it would be full of conflict, and we would find a flaw and create arguments. And I think that's probably the only regret that I still live with, is how I parented when they were younger. You know, I know I'm a great mom now.
Oh,
I,
you're more than a great mom now.
I know
You're-
with 100% certainty.
Yeah.
But there are times where I wish that I could go back and do it over again.
Sure.
But then on the flip side of that,
They're strong.
they are strong, and they got to see that the extent to which change is possible. And that's something I think that in going forward in their lives is going to serve them to where they're going to be able to look at people and not immediately judge and know that, oh, that person will never change, because they watched mom and dad. They watched mom go from pharmaceutical addict, passed out, sick, couldn't walk for months to this.
Yeah.
And
From distant, not in their lives, to best friend, and mom is. They used to. I remember they used to walk into the room and say, like, if Angie and I were in the room, they used to walk into the room and say, hey Dad. That was the first words out of their mouth, because I was their primary source when they were kids. I love babies. I love the youngins. I love raising kids. And if it were up to me, we'd have 10 kids. But between the two of us, we don't have a uterus anymore. So I loved raising babies. I loved raising those kids. And I spent like every second I could. And I got a lot of shit for that too. You want them to be part of everything. I'm like, yeah, well, I do want them to, want to be part of everything with them. But the point being is, they used to walk in a room and say, hey, Dad. And then when you started coming back to life and you really started being present with them, then they shifted and they walk into a room and they say, hey, Mom. At first I was like, well, this kind of sucks. But I've watched them grow so close and connected and bonded with you. And of course there's this best friend freaking like scuffles instead of mom and daughter scuffles. Right. They're like best friend scuffles, and it's really cool to see that. But it's been a beautiful journey watching everything. To your point, they have no excuses. We've taken all their excuses away.
Yeah.
We've showed them that if you're settling for less than you want, less than you deserve, if you're settling for less than joy and fulfillment, you're your only impediment. There's nothing in your way. I went from a corporate executive, working a lot, making a lot of money. I'm making more now, but making a lot of money, sacrificing 6, sometimes 7 days a week, doing shit that I hated, going someplace I didn't want to go, working for people I didn't want to work for, with my laptop in bed, doing stuff to make other people a lot of money. And one time, our older daughter, like, this is a couple years ago. It's about 4 years ago, when Angie was headed to work, because she loves.
I work to keep from killing Mike.
She works to get away from me.
Yes.
My daughter Katie was headed to her first job, and our daughter Megan was headed to her first job, all at the same time. Like, all 3 girls are walking out of the door, and my daughter Katie looked at me and said, "You're the only one in this house without a job."
Yep.
And here come the waterworks.
Yep,
because we're showing them that you don't have to do stuff that you hate, and you don't have to go places you don't want to go to have things that you want to have in your life. And our daughters have actually come up to us and said, "Dad, how are we surviving?"
Yeah, sometimes I think
how are we living? How are we affording all this?
Mortgage being paid?
We just got back from Europe. We went to a vacation to Europe, and our daughters, our younger, just turned 18 and graduated high school. So we basically kind of said, "Hey, pick a country, let's go." Yep. And one picked Paris, France, and one picked Edinburgh, Scotland. Yep. So we took them on like a 10-day or 9 or 10-day vacation, and we went to Europe. And I know those girls are like, how the hell are we doing this? Like, how is this? Like, Dad's not doing anything. Yeah. They see me sitting around a lot. And journaling, meditating. They see me on calls, but I don't think they understand the magnitude. But for me, we're showing them that you don't have to kill yourself to have an awesome life.
Yeah, no. And I think that someone asked me recently, one of my coworkers at my current job, he said that Megan, our younger daughter, she should get her resume going, and she should have all of these. She's very scholarly. Katie, our older daughter, is an athlete, very athletic. She's a college cheerleader, but Megan needs to have her resume. And I said, I don't know if these kids are ever going to work for someone.
I think they're so. First of all, they're both leaders.
Yep.
I don't think either of them are very good followers.
No.
I think they're very good leaders.
Yes.
I think I don't know if they have a lot of followership in them.
We don't have a lot of followership in our household, which causes a lot of
for
conflict.
people that are bullheaded and driven in our own directions. But I think they see that you don't have to do stuff that you hate to have what you want.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and that you can make a radical transformation. Because when I decide, it's done.
Yeah.
And Angie has seen that. When I decide and I choose and I go all in, it is done. And that shows up in my health. That shows up in our business. That shows up in anything that I take on. When I choose, it's done. And hopefully that's a good example for Angie and the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think it's one thing that is really fun, I think, for people to know is that the mic that you hear on this mic every week and that you see on Facebook, this is who he is 24/7. So when I say I work to keep from killing him, I literally go to work to get out of the house, because if I don't, it doesn't stop. The mornings I'll wake up and he's been up for a couple of hours and can you read this? Can you listen to this? I'm like, oh my gosh, he just doesn't turn it off, and it's amazing. But going back to when we first started this, watching the dedication and the drive, it's, as much as I joke about it, it really is. It's pretty amazing to have something that strong to see on a daily basis, as much as I bitch about it.
I saw something the other day.
Do you want me to read it?
No.
Oh.
I saw something the other day, and this is another Jesse Elder-ism, okay, and I loved it. Now, this is going to create some controversy, but that's okay. But I want to talk about this, because I think this is we're going to bring this to a close. But we're certainly not done with this conversation, but we're going to bring this session to a close. But this little thought that he shared was very powerful in my mind. It's definitely shown up in our life, and I think you'll be able to provide some insight. It said, "The man surrenders to his purpose. The woman surrenders to her man. The universe surrenders to the woman." Can you talk about that?
Not in the 3 minutes we have left.
We got plenty of time.
I think that I'll briefly. I don't know how to answer that right now. I think that the surrendering to the woman, I think that just goes back to where you and I.
The universe surrenders to your woman.
The universe surrenders to the woman. Typically, when I put an intention out there, it comes to fruition.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
So
But that took me surrendering to you, and again, not to cause controversy, but it's because I believe in your dream.
That's it. That is the surrendering to a man that he was talking about. So it's, I have a purpose.
Yes.
I have a mission. I have impact to make in the world. And what's happened in our relationship over time, and this is going back to corporate days and maybe even a little bit into our coaching mission. But when you've gotten scared, in some cases you were my greatest resistance to me serving my purpose. But when you surrender to my purpose and you go all in with me on my purpose without getting in the way, you get whatever you want.
100%.
That's what was happening. That's what that concept meant to me.
Okay.
It wasn't that you surrender to me and do what I say. It's, I am here on purpose. And it's your role
Yeah.
in our relationship is to keep me in my purpose.
Right. It's not surrendering to you in the misogynistic
Right.
way
Not at
that
all.
me man,
Yeah.
you do what I say. That's not how this goes at all. And I don't want that to come across in any way, shape, or form, because I am the most stubborn,
Sure.
bullheaded person, and you do not tell me what to do. You can make a suggestion.
Yeah, no,
Just like
absolutely
a
true.
cat.
And that's why I say that thought
Yeah.
is very controversial.
Until
but,
you unpack it.
But when Angie said, how could she trust me to stand up for her if I wouldn't stand up to her? That is about understanding your purpose, your mission, and your impact that you're here to make. And I'm talking about me.
Yes.
And when I stepped into that, that's when you could finally trust me
Yes.
in our life.
Correct.
And that's when I fully stepped into that, firmly stepped into that, and didn't let you pull me back, that's when our life started to really take off.
Yes.
And I had to get really clear about who I was and what I wanted to achieve and how I was going to live the rest of my life. And you're like, finally, you got a backbone.
Right.
And can I stretch it and say that's when you really started to love who I was becoming?
Yes, and that's because, again, subconsciously, I always knew that's who you were. I mean, we could go into a whole other conversation that's always who you were here to who you were here to become. But my fear, my lack of security, your trauma, that all held us back until we started the whole deprogramming process and getting out of the shit that we're told that we're supposed to be doing. And that was all you. I mean, if you didn't take that first step, I can sit here and say with 100% certainty that if you had not taken that first step that day in that recliner when you were reading Slight Edge, The Slight Edge, if you had not made that switch, we would probably still be in that space. Because I know I didn't have it in me to do that. And I know for a fact.
Somebody has to lead.
Yeah.
Somebody has to take lead, and somebody had to stand up for what they believed in. One of us had to stand up for what they believed in, and I just chose to. I just chose to do it. And when the attacks, I'll end it on not end it on this, but I'll bring it to a close with this thought. I was on an awesome. I hired, one of the things that really helped me put my life back together. My life was hiring a mentor, having a coach. First time, and I thought it was hiring a friend, right? But I hired a coach, and he taught me this simple little trick, and this completely worked. Is when Angie, going back to the old times when Angie would attack me, she'd say, "Mike, you're a piece of shit." I'd say, "No, I'm not. You're a piece of shit." And I would start tearing down, and I would start slinging like insults and showing her all the ways that she was a piece of shit and whatever, blah blah blah. And he said, "Hey, try this." And I tried this, and it worked. And it was this simple. Is Angie would say, "Mike, you're a piece of shit," and I would say, "You might be right, but you sure do look fine right now. And you are hot. And you know what? You've never been more hot than you are right this second." And she's like, what the fuck do I do with that? And I wouldn't feed into the drama and the conflict. And she didn't know what to do with that. For the first time, I didn't amplify the conflict. I diffused the conflict. So she stopped attacking. And when she stopped attacking, that's when things got better. And it wasn't until I led that she stopped attacking. Because that's what she always wanted from me. She wanted me to lead. And I wouldn't lead. I was a follower. Yep. I would just do whatever I was told. I would go where I was told, and I would feed into any conflict or drama that she threw out. And this isn't, look, I know the age we live in with, gender identity and role, whatever. I'm not telling anybody how to live. I'm just telling our story. Mm-hmm. When I didn't lead, our life sucked. Yeah. But when I lead, our life always gets better. And it's not because Angie does not do what I tell her. Let me be frank and forthright about that. Angie doesn't do what I tell her, and I don't tell her what to do. Right. I do what I believe is true for me and the most valuable for us, and I trust my instincts, and that's leading and not following.
Absolutely.
And the right people jump on the bus, and the right people jump off the bus. And Angie jumped on, and our lives have improved from that point forward. Do you have last question?
Yes.
Name 3 things that absolutely annoy you about me. Go.
How much time do we have? So 3 things that I don't like ending it on that note.
No, this is
Okay.
fun.
Okay, so he doesn't stop moving. I go into sensory overload, and he's whistling and he's tapping and he doesn't stop moving. So that's 1. 2 is he is overly energetic in the morning.
True story. It starts as soon as my eyes open up. When I say get excited about the life that you're creating,
Yeah.
I'm not joking. And
number 3 is you cook really smelly food.
I do, and I eat
Yeah.
really smelly food.
Yeah.
I love some sardines, boy.
Yeah, I love my house smelling good. I have all kinds of fragrant stuff all throughout the house, and he'll come in and ruin it with chicken and garlic.
I do eat some. I do eat weird in common terms. I eat very select and very a small box, but it works for me, and it's pretty smelly. You know what annoys me about you?
I was gonna ask you what annoys you about
Nothing.
me?
I love everything about you. That's how we're gonna end this.
Okay.
Baby, this has been fun.
It has.
I love you so
Definitely
much.
Love you too. I'm very proud.
I wouldn't give up any second of the pain that we experienced to get to this place, because even when we have conflict, and our conflict today doesn't look like conflict.
No.
And there's one thing that I know on my side, I don't know about you, but I'll say for me is whenever we're in conflict, there's no idea that anything is in jeopardy
No.
about our bond.
That's what, going back to when we first started this, that our foundation is so rock solid. If we were famous, we would have, you've got the Harry and Meghan love story Netflix thing. Our love story beats the fuck out of theirs. We're just not famous enough to tell it yet.
And maybe this
Yet.
podcast episode will make us famous.
Yes.
Guys, thanks for spending time with us. I'm glad you got to meet the love of my life and my best friend and my soulmate. I early on, I didn't believe she was my soulmate. I thought she was like the devil. But the point is she became my soulmate. My phone never rings this much. So if you can hear that, I apologize. But I wouldn't give up any second of the pain that we experienced, because it's got us to such a powerful place. And I'm glad I'm here, and I'm glad I'm here with you.
And I love you, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to do this again.
Yeah. Hey, listen. Great insight for how to build an awesome relationship. You ready for this? A man will go wherever he feels respected. If a man gets respected at work, don't be surprised, and disrespected at home, don't be surprised when he avoids home. And a woman will go wherever she feels loved, whether that's with you or with someone else.
Security.
And security. So when a man feels respected, that's the greatest source of commitment that a man could ever dream of. And I've passed that concept through many, many men, and all I got was head wags, head nods. Our life changed because of, first of all, my ability early on to win your respect, but your continued respect. So thank you for being in my life, and I love you. And you are the fuel in my engine. I love you guys. Thank you. This has been a great episode, and we'll definitely have more of these. Until next time.